Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Tess Jones. I've known her for about 10 years now, and I ran into her at a house concert a couple months ago, and she was wearing this cool pin that I asked her about, and she had told me that is cycling without age. So she told me all about it, and I'm like, you should come to Rotary and talk about it, and it'd be very cool. So my husband Isaac was with me at that event. And I left, I don't know what I was doing, but I was already out in the car and he was still inside. And Tess grabbed him and said, here, make sure Melissa calls me, and puts her number and the cycling without age. And in the words of Pete Morrell, a short pencil is more reliable than the longest memory. So that was my bad. I did remember that though. So we got a laugh out of that, that she made sure to write her phone number down. Anyway, Tess is from North Carolina. She moved to Colorado when she was 20 to go to graduate school at CSU. And so we sucked her in and she never left. And she's worked for CDOT and Woody's. Don't we miss Woody's? And so I asked her about cycling without age. She is a pilot, trainer, and coordinator. And this came about in 2018 when she saw an older man that was riding a homemade bicycle, giving rides to people. And so she looked into the program and formed a chapter here in Greeley, out of Windsor. So she's going to tell us a little bit about it. And I asked her what's her favorite thing that she likes about doing this. And she said the ride is always different for when she has people on her bike, and she just loves that they have a good time. So without further ado, Tess Jones.
Melissa's been my best insurance agent for all these years. So I'll try to be respectful of your time. What time should I be wrapping up everything? You guys move right along. Oh, that's lots of time. Okay, in my experience of talking to different groups, what I found is that, some people were interested in the program mechanics, some want to know more about where we go, others want to know about the funding and the money part of it. So I guess maybe just a quick raise of hands. Have you seen the bikes on the trail?
Yes.
Do you know a tiny bit? Not very many. Okay, and I think I'm actually going to start, maybe not by answering your questions, but taking some questions initially to see where your interest lies, because I could talk about this for probably more than 40 minutes, but mainly interested in the service to the community, or who we serve, or how do we fund all those things.
Yes.
So all of it. Okay, I've got time to. Okay, great. So you've got a packet, everybody's, and I've got extras if you want to take those to anybody or share them next time. The two little things that are attached, the sticker for the Poudre Trail, you stick that on your water bottle. We are part of the Poudre Trail operations. So we're a separate group, a nonprofit. Cycling Without Age is an international organization that began 11 years ago in Denmark, in Copenhagen, where everybody always rode their bike everywhere, to church and to the market, and everything they did was on the bike. And the founder, he's a big bicycle guy, and he was at the coffee shop one day and saw this man. He was on his bike and he saw this older gentleman. Just every time he went there, he saw this man like admiring his bicycle. And he asked him if he rode a bike. Of course, he had ridden a bike his whole life, but he was in his, I think, mid 80s at that point. And he said, I just can't do it anymore. So he rented a 3-wheel bike and he made friends with this gentleman. And every week he gave him a ride, and then he started the program. So the program is always on a 3-wheel bicycle. The seat always is on the front. So you're not looking at the peddler's fanny pedaling away from you, and a great view of, and it's really a different experience than being on a rickshaw. People say, I've ridden a rickshaw, well, it's a really different feeling from that. So the reason for the Poudre Trail sticker is for everybody here to understand that our operation is part of their operation. The Pooter Trail, they don't fund us, but they assist in some funding if we run short. And the rides all happen on the Pooter Trail. So although we might give some rides, like on Friday, I'm riding the bike from the bikes live at the Red Barn, which is at 71st Avenue. Let's see, the Red Barn's on there somewhere. Right there. And on here, the Red Barn's at 71st Avenue and Signature Bluffs. The two bikes live there. And I'm riding the bike to town to the Boomer House to do some demo rides. And that day we'll just do little quick rides so that people can see. It'll mostly be a senior group so that they can see how easy it is to get off and on the bike, because that's a concern for people. They see that bike and they think they have to step up and climb on there, when in fact the center section of this footrest comes out and you just step up to it and sit down, and then we reinsert. So it's super friendly. We've taken people in wheelchairs if somebody can get them on the bike. We don't assist in loading or anything like that, but we can offer a hand to stabilize somebody that's uncertain. We've taken lots of people with walkers or canes, whatever they have. If they're willing to come ride with us, we want them to get to go. So the ride is to experience nature. It's always a nature ride. We're talking about the birds. And yesterday we saw turtles, 39 pelicans last week at one time on the pond by the Red Barn. The herons are crazy out there right now. The Heron Rookery is just east of 59th Avenue, right along it's along the river, and it's probably a half a mile away, but you can see it clear view right now because there aren't any leaves on the trees. 41 heron nests in one spot in this rookery. So we point out what we see. We talk about things we don't see that we might see. Last year I was giving a ride to a lady and her granddaughter, and an eagle swooped down and grabbed a prairie dog right in front of us. They were screaming. Yeah. Everybody's got to eat, but it was sort of alarming. We see the eagles. We often see the eagles. So on the day that I counted 41 heron nests, I also saw 27 herons standing on the side of the nest or swooping, hunting for fish or whatever. The herons, they migrate to the Caribbean in the winter. So they had just come back to visit, to live here for the summer. And the males were here early and they were rebuilding the nest. So we talk about all these things. So people that can't take a ride on their own bike or can't walk on the trail, maybe they've never gotten to do that. They've never seen the trail, or they grew up doing that and now can't do it anymore. It could be somebody that's aged out of feeling comfortable to do that, or it can be somebody that doesn't have the capacity for any reason. We serve in Vision in Evans. Yesterday, we gave 10 rides, 10 people rides to that group, and they love to come. So they came all summer last year and the year before. We give a lot of service as much as we can, and we like to give more to the senior facilities. So they can bring a bus. Sometimes it's just 2 people in a car. Sometimes it's 8 or 10 people in a van, and we just give short rides. And sometimes they get more than one ride in their day if they can stay for a couple hours. So we don't have a shelter there in the Red Barn, but we're hoping that this year the Pooter Trail has in their funding to be able to build a shelter. So that will be even nicer. And there's only a toilet, like a portalet there. There's no water source. We're hoping that there'll be a little better toilet facilities, because some of the seniors get concerned about that. Am I going to be there for an hour and then what do I do? So the first full sheet is our why and who, our how, where, and when. And then those are some of the most important things. So the why and who is anybody that can't do it on their own. And the why is they've been in the house, they're bored, they haven't gotten to visit with anybody, they feel isolated. We want them to enjoy nature and to have some social engagement. Those would be the main things. The how, the rides are always free. The program is funded primarily by donations. It's always by volunteers. So the volunteer pilots, we have 22 pilots. I coordinate the pilots and train all the pilots. Many of them have pedaled for us for a couple of years. So they're all very experienced. We've never had any kind of an incident, never had an accident, never had a complaint, that somebody felt like they were afraid. We've served Alzheimer's folks that come, we never take them without somebody on the bike with them, somebody that can talk with them and comfort them if they're nervous. We've taken grandparents with their great grandchildren. We've done some like reunion rides, families come up from all over the United States and gather, and there they are, and they get to ride together. So it's not just for the senior person, but to get them to have an experience with their family or their friends that they can remember and photograph and talk about or plan for the next ride. Last year, our most frequent passenger was Dorothy Trowbridge. Probably some of you know her. She turns 100 this year. So we'll be giving, she probably did 8 rides last year. She has family that lives in Seattle and Texas, and she would bring them on. And some of them would go on their bikes. So here you can see this lady, she brings her parents and also her in-laws. We have these 2 bikes in the Red Barn. So it's really fun to get them to go sort of as a little train. They love that. Eric Garnsey, lots of you know Eric, he's here. He donated the second bike. The first bike was donated by a couple of people that funded it. And then he funded the second one the first year, which was 2 years ago in March, we started the program. So this was his one and only trip, but he loved being on his own bike. So it was super fun. Mike Sturm, he lives right behind the Red Barn. He's one of our pilots. And he got spoken. He's a good friend of his from church. So they were smiling around there. This was Meadowview Senior Facility. They came lots of times over the last couple of years. Kimberly, she's one of our most dedicated pilots. She managed Woody's newsstand for 17 years. I recognize her. So we have pilots that live in Windsor, some that drive over from Fort Collins that are really dedicated to help us, and they love to help us train, and then to talk with people about, go with me to some promotional things to talk with people that could do it on their own, but might know people that can't. So super fun to spread the word. This second thing that you have there, that's 3 pages, got a photograph on the front. This lady, she just had a stroke, the pilot. So this year she won't be piloting with us, but we'll be taking her on the bike as she recovers from her physical problems. But she had her grandchildren on the bike with her, and my dog, the little black dog's in lots of the photos. She is not part of the official program, but she goes whenever I go. And she's ridden more miles than anybody on the bike, because sometimes she goes with other pilots if the people want the dog. So her name is Emma. And she's well-trained and gentle, and she's a good citizen, canine good citizen. So on the bottom of that second page there, you'll see the 5 guiding principles. These are the guiding principles of the international program. Generosity. So we're giving to others. It's always free. It's out of our heart. Slowness. we're traveling fast enough for them to feel their wind in their hair, but to not be afraid. And because when you're in the front of the bike, it feels like everything's rushing at you. We travel like 5 to 8 miles an hour. So slow enough that we can stop and see something, see a bird or see a turtle, or not run over a snake. We've seen some snakes out there too. And yet quickly enough that they are not bored and they feel, and if it's a hot day, we might maybe break that speed limit of 8 miles an hour on a straightaway where we can see what's coming. Relationships, it's so that we make some relationships with the passengers. They make relationships with each other. If they come from a senior facility, they may not know the partner that's on the bike with them. So they have an experience together that they can share. Without age, that part of it's sort of misunderstood sometimes, but it just means anybody that can go with us or wants to go with us that has a need or has somebody in the group that has the need to go do something fun that they couldn't do otherwise. So I'd like to take some questions. If you want to talk about funding part of it and the price of the bikes, I can answer some of those questions. Two of them live in the Red Barn.
Okay.
The newest bike was just purchased last year in August, and that program is in Windsor, and it lives at the Good Sam's at Water Valley. That high rise, and it's still owned by the Poudre Trail, and the rides still happen on the Poudre Trail. It just is housed there for now. Sure.
Just curious, who makes the tri-shots?
These bikes that every program doesn't use the same bike, but there are about 5 manufacturers. This one is made in Copenhagen. The bikes cost $13,000 a piece. $13,000.
They're e-assist.
They're e-assist. The battery is about $1,000. In addition to that $13,000, the bikes have up to 8 gears, and they have up to 4 levels. They have 4 levels of assistance. So it's an official legal bike on the Poudre Trail. It's a class 1 e-bike. It's rated to go up to 20 miles an hour. I've been up to 18 on it without a passenger. Would never do that with a passenger, but just to see how it handles. They're very stable. I've ridden it in the wind. A lot of times people don't want to go in the wind, but we've got one of these photos. We show some people bundled up. This lady lives in Lyons and came on October ride. So our rides start in April and they go to Thanksgiving. So her daughter lives in Greeley, and she brought her mother from Lyons, and they just wore their warm coats and mittens. And we gave our last ride last November. In that ride, the guys were all bundled up in they had mittens and big hats, and everybody had their blankets. We have blankets on the bikes. So it's sort of an all season as long as it's not raining or snowing.
How do you train the pilots?
The pilots, it's about a 12-hour training process. There's 5 steps. The first is that the person that's interested needs to go with me on a demo ride. So it's an opportunity for them to ride as a passenger and also to get on the bike and pedal it in a safe place. So I usually take them over to the Poudre Learning Center and we ride around the parking lot there. And then they take a class in a group of 4. It's a 4-hour class. And with that, we have the 2 bikes from the Red Barn, and we do the class there. We have 2 helpers plus me, and everybody it's mostly a hands-on thing. And then they get a handbook, and they have to study the handbook. Then they practice on the bike with a passenger and a trainer. And then they take a test ride, and they do a background check. So all those steps usually takes about 5 weeks for people to get through that process.
Wasn't the first one given by Mike and Lincoln?
Pardon me?
Wasn't the first one given by Mike and Lily Peterman?
They were part contributor. Mhm. Mhm.
Two questions. How do you become a pilot and how do you sign up for a ride if somebody wants to?
Okay, so the sign up for a ride part, I'm the Tess on the very bottom there. You can call me directly, or you can go onto the Poudre Trail website. And there you'll find this thing that says arrange a ride or become a pilot. Both of those are on there. The easiest is to call Mike Rye. So that's Mike Kitterling's number and my number. I do a lot of arranging for pilot demo rides. So that would be the thing if somebody wants to see if they want to become a pilot. What I've discovered over training so many people to do this is that probably 25% of the people that say they want to be a pilot actually do it. A lot of people just want to ride the bike. They just want to get on the bike and see what it feels like. And some people want to say they're a pilot, but don't really want to put forth the effort to become one.
How many
Which
hours
is
a week
disappointing.
is that commitment?
The commitment is 2 half days a month of pilot. That's the minimum requirement.
I know this is primarily for seniors, but what about people with disabilities?
It's primarily for any of those people that can't go. It's for the Envision people. A lot of those people have some disability, either a physical disability or a challenge where they can't drive or ride a bike. We welcome those people. Originally, I think in Copenhagen, it started for seniors, but it's really broadened to serve anybody that wants to enjoy the experience that couldn't do it on their own. Our rides are always nature rides. So every chapter all over, there are more than 52 countries that have this program, thousands and thousands of chapters. Everyone has its own personality. So the international program doesn't govern that. They do grant chapters, but they don't participate in making any of the decisions about how you run your chapter, how you fund it, where you take people, who you take. Those 5 guiding principles are the backbone to make sure that the program continues to do its original mission.
So where do you, if you sign up to do this, you go to the Poudre Learning Center?
That's been a challenge. You have to come to meet us at the trail. So if it's a senior facility, they have to bring somebody to the trail to meet us. Some of the other chapters, if they have a chapter where the bike lives at the senior facility, they may just load onto the bike and go down the sidewalk. And these 2 that are at the Red Barn, they have to drive to the Red Barn or to the Poudre Learning Center in order to start the ride. We can start at either one of those places. Yes.
Given that this is a bit of a nature thing, do the pilots, they have to have at least a little bit of knowledge on the kind of the flora and fauna that you're seeing throughout the trip, like maybe you guys provide
Little-
guidance on
we-
that, or like
we do.
pick up along the way.
Both. We do give a little bit in the training handbook about those kinds of things and some of the features and history of the trail. So the markers along the trail, what do they mean? Where does the trail start and stop? How long is it? Those kinds of things. When was the trail built? A little bit about the ditches and the water, and all those things are interesting to some people, not to others. And we give them some information about the flora and fauna. I'm creating a little guidebook. It's called the Poudre Trail Ride Guide that will give some more of that information to the pilot, not so that they can give a speech, but that they can study it and then answer some of those questions, hopefully make it more interesting for everybody. I think you were
Who maintains your bicycle?
the bike peddler.
Okay.
Thank you to them.
What
Yes.
time of day? Is it early morning and
Uh,
night, or I mean late afternoon or is it all day long?
It's 9, first ride is at 9 in the morning and finishes at 3:30 on weekdays. And because we have this bike in Windsor now, there's not as much traffic over there, and the Poudre Trail, the trailhead at the Red Barn gets packed on the weekends. So we don't, and there's lots and lots of activity on the trail on the weekends, so we don't give rides unless it's maybe a birthday ride or something that's really special. We could do that on a weekend. But in Windsor, that bike, we ride it to Eastman Park, and from there we get on the trail. And the park at Eastman, I don't know if you guys ever go there, but it's beautiful. It has an all-year shelter with all-year toilets. It's like a fabulous place for people that are concerned about parking. Great ADA parking, lots and lots of facilities that people that have stability issues would be concerned about rather than being in a gravel parking lot. So that's a perfect place to be able to extend the program to do more than just weekdays. And we hope to eventually have a second bike there because it's really fun to have two bikes to go. 4 people can go at a time.
Do you need more riders? Do you need more?
We need
pilots?
more of
You
everything.
need a new bike.
We need more passengers. Yesterday, that ride of 10 people was only the 3rd ride I've given this year. And we've been trying to give rides since the 1st of April. But because we've had some crazy weather, people have been hesitant, and they, once they get on the bike and they get under the blanket, it's really comfortable. But being on the bike and moving is colder than just being out there walking around. So they get anxious about that. We need more pilots. I'm trying to add 10 this year, and I've trained 4 so far. And again, 1 has followed through and 3 have not. So it's discouraging. We don't want people to think it's an exercise program. It's not that. We get bike clubs that say, oh yeah, I want to do that. I ride 100 miles every 3 days and I want to do this to help people. And we're not going that fast, and we're not getting a workout. We're not huffing and puffing because we've got this battery assistance. And one of the ladies, she weighs 100 pounds. She's a pilot. One of the guys weighs 220 pounds. They can do the same thing because of the way the bike is designed. It's really a star kind of a bike. There've been different manufacturers that different groups have tried, and this one's like the best one. So if you were to say, do we need a new bike? Could somebody buy one? Sure, we would love that. But what we need then is storage. So the next project I think that will happen as far as funding for our program is to have a facility in Windsor to store the bike and room to have 2 bikes there. That's our goal. The town of Windsor loves our bike program. In fact, I don't know if you guys know Wade Willis, but he's a big fan.
How did you first get involved with the program?
I think Melissa told a bit of the story. I was at Rover Run with my dog, and I saw this young man. He was maybe 18. He had his pickup truck and he had this cool homemade bike in the back, 3-wheel bike. And it was this huge thing. And you could see that he had made it or somebody had made it. It wasn't manufactured by any, it wasn't official anyway. And he had an older gentleman with him. I didn't get the whole story, but he looked to be in his 80s or 90s and pretty frail, but this huge smile on his face. And I don't know if they were related, but they had this great relationship. And he said that he gave him a ride on this bike every week. And he was so excited. And so I went on my way. I had my dog in the basket of my bike, and we met them coming and going. Every time I saw them, they were waving and pointing and looking at the birds, and they were just having the greatest time. So I went home that night and started to research 3-wheel bikes, and that's how I discovered the program. And so from there, because I understood just from researching it just the slightest bit to see that it was really easy to start a chapter and we needed something. And there are I think eight chapters in Colorado, but there wasn't anybody around here doing it. So that was my goal. And I started to meet with different programs, different assistance groups, and the Poudre Trail board presented to them. And then COVID happened. So I started my chapter. COVID took over our lives for 2 years. And then at the point where the trail started to think about rejuvenating, getting people out on the trail to do something in fresh air, they remembered that I was trying to start the chapter. So Mike Kitterling asked me if I wanted to help him with it. So Bob Hinderucker, who is the manager of the Poudre Trail, he and Mike and I started the program. It's really a magical thing.
Did you say you had 3 bikes?
We have 2 at the Red Barn,
Through there and then
and one
one
in
Windsor.
Windsor.
So there's 3 total.
3 total.
And they didn't have any in Fort Collins.
No, when I started my program, my goal was to have my own bike and I would haul it because I don't live in Greeley. I live out in the country. I was going to haul it to Windsor and to Fort Collins and different places where I could see that there were great opportunities for seniors to get on the bike and also good trails to go on. So that was what I was planning to do. There has never been a program actually started there, although if you look on the website for the international program, it says there are 3 chapters in Fort Collins. There aren't any. They got authorization for chapters, but they never actually started the program. So they didn't fund the bikes. Time. Yes.
If you have somebody that really is just enjoying it and wants to ride all the time, do you have limitations on how many
No.
rides they can have? Or can they
We've
just-
never had
they
a
can
problem
just keep
finding.
going?
Yeah. Yes, the current Dorothy Trowbridge, I think she'll be riding probably every week. I don't know if you knew Norma. She lived at the Greeley place. She was our previous most frequent rider, and Norma Bartell was her name. Anybody know her? She loved our program and promoted it widely. She passed away, but she went probably 15 times. And she helped to fund the bike. We don't talk about money with any of the people that are riding because we don't ever want them to feel like they can't ride if they aren't ready to give us a donation. So, thank you so much.
Any questions from the Zoomers? Okay. Nope. All right. Well, thank you very much for your program. And as a thank you, this little comfort animal will be going to Greeley to the Community Grief Center, which we're using their building right now. And on the tag, it says, "This stuffed animal wants to help you when things are hard. Snuggle with it and you will feel a little love and caring. This comfort animal is given to you by Greeley Centennial Rotary in honor of Tess Jones, who is our presenter with today's date. And on the backside is our 4-way test." So thank you again very, very much. All right.